I was kicked out by my mom and her affair partner, so I exposed their fraud and ruined him forever. What is up? My mom's affair partner convinced her to kick me out at 18. Middle of November, 38 degrees, duffel bag, and a dying phone. Nobody came after me. I, 20, male now, writing this from a studio apartment with a mattress on the floor and a 3.6 GPA. I have never told this story start to finish. Every ugly chapter, every calculated move, every moment where I had to choose between being someone's doormat and being the guy who walks away with his spine intact. Let me rewind. My dad's truck was gone on a Tuesday. I came downstairs at 6:15 a.m., early shift at the warehouse where I loaded pallets and ran inventory after school. The driveway was empty on his side. I did a room-by-room sweep and got the same answer everywhere. Closet cleared. The garage pegboard where he kept 20 years of hand tools organized by type. Bear the photo of us at Mount Rushmore, me at 12, sunburned. Him squinting with his arm around my shoulder. Gone from the hallway wall, just a nail in a darker rectangle where the frame used to live. Mom was at the kitchen table, was not crying, was not talking, just sitting there with a mug of coffee she was not drinking. I asked where Dad was. She said, "He is gone." 2 words, no explanation, like she was reporting the weather. My brother Cody was 14. Kid lived in a parallel universe of basketball highlights and Discord servers. He did not notice Dad was missing for almost 3 days. Cody was Mom's favorite, always had been, the one she lit up for, bragged about, never missed a game. Me? I was the kid who kept the house running and got nods instead of thank yous. After Dad vanished, Mom went to work, came home, and disappeared into her phone. I ran the house because somebody had to. But here is the thing I did not catch at the time. About 3 weeks after Dad left, I walked into the kitchen late one night and Mom was on the phone laughing. Not the hollow going through the motions laugh of a woman whose husband just disappeared. A real laugh, low, warm, private, the kind you save for someone specific. When she heard my footsteps, she went silent mid-sentence and said, "I have to go." I asked who it was. She said, "Work stuff." At 11 p.m. on a Thursday, I filed it away and did not think about it again until everything else started making sense. 8 weeks after Dad vanished, she sat me and Cody down and told us she was getting married to a man named Sully. She was smiling when she said it, a big giddy smile like she had been sitting on good news for weeks and could not hold it anymore. Cody was immediately on board. New stepdad, new energy, probably new stuff. I sat there doing arithmetic that did not work. 8 weeks. You do not go from catatonic to bridal in 8 weeks unless the timeline started way before the math suggests. That late-night phone call, the way she had been checking her phone constantly, angling the screen away from me. The time I saw the name S in her recent contacts and thought nothing of it. I said nothing. I was still the good kid. The wedding was fast. Backyard, maybe 25 people, almost all Sully's crowd. No one from Dad's side. Cody was in the front row already calling Sully Dad like the word was a party favor. I stood in the back, clocked the timeline, and counted the minutes until I could leave. I'd Sully figured out inside of 30 seconds. Early 50s, decent shape, drove a leased Audi Q5 he talked about like it was a personality trait. He worked as a regional director for a medical device company. The kind of guy who understood how to control a room without raising his voice. From day one, he wanted me gone. When Mom was in the room, Sully was flawless, charming, attentive, textbook stepfather performer. But the moment she left, the mask dropped. He would look at me like I was a problem he was working on solving. Cold, evaluating. It started subtle comments about how I did not seem to respect the new dynamic. How I needed to adjust my attitude in his house. His house. The house my dad had paid the mortgage on for 16 years, but the first kept my mouth shut. Mom was functioning again. Cody was stable. And I had 6 months until graduation. I could outlast this. Then came the wedding night. The reception had barely ended. Paper plates still stacked on the folding tables. Cody passed out on the couch. When Sully pulled Mom into the hallway, I could hear them from the kitchen. His voice was low and methodical, hers uncertain at first, then agreeable. 20 minutes later, Mom called me into the living room. She stood next to Sully, his hand on the small of her back like a stabilizer, keeping her upright. She told me they decided it would be best for everyone if I found my own living situation. I waited for her to laugh. She did not. Sully laid out his case like he was running a quarterly review. I was creating friction. My resistance to the new family structure was putting stress on their marriage. Then he leaned forward and said, "I want to be clear. This is not a discussion. You have until Sunday to make arrangements. After that, you are trespassing on private property and I will handle it accordingly." Trespassing in my own home. I looked at Mom. She was not avoiding eye contact. She was reinforcing him. She looked right at me and said, "This is what is best for the family. You will understand when you are older," said to her 18-year-old son standing in his own living room, being told to leave by a man who had been in the house for less than a day. She was not weak in that moment. She was making a choice, clearly, deliberately, and she wanted me to know it. That was the whole conversation. No negotiation, no appeal, just a verdict delivered by a man who had been part of my life for less time than most magazine subscriptions, and a mother whose CO signed it without flinching. I went to my room and packed clothes, laptop, a few books, chargers, and the watch Dad gave me for my 16th birthday. A Citizen Eco Drive with an engraving on the back. "Build something, Dad." I almost left it. Something about carrying a gift from a man who had abandoned me felt wrong, but at the last second, I shoved it in my bag. Could not explain why. I walked out the front door at 11:40 p.m. on a Wednesday night. November, 38 degrees, thin jacket, duffel bag, phone at 9%. Nobody came after me. The only person who picked up was my Aunt Denise, Dad's older sister. I had not spoken to her in months because Mom had been quietly cutting off Dad's entire side of the family, something she had started doing even before Dad left and went full scorched earth with once he was gone. Blocked numbers, declined invitations, redirected mail, a clean amputation. But Denise did not hesitate. She told me to come over. When I showed up at her door close to midnight with a duffel bag, looking like I had not slept in a week, she pulled me inside without a single question and made up the guest room. Denise was good people, blunt, practical, zero tolerance for nonsense. Her husband was a plumber, quiet, hardworking, clearly unsure what to do with a displaced 18-year-old crashing his spare bedroom on a school night. They had 2 kids under 8 and a tight budget. I made myself as small as possible, ate less than I needed, showered fast, kept my stuff in the duffel bag like I might need to leave at any moment. Denise noticed. She started leaving protein bars on the nightstand without saying anything. That hit me harder than anything Sully said. I re-enrolled myself for my final semester. New bus route, 45 minutes each way, running on 4 hours of sleep and gas station coffee. Got a job at a Greek diner off the state highway, $12.50 an hour plus tips, which on a Tuesday lunch shift meant about $11 in crumpled singles from retirees and truckers. I busted tables, ran dishes, mopped floors, and took non-stop grief from a line cook whose entire vocabulary was insults and spatula gestures. My sneakers permanently smelled like gyro grease and industrial sanitizer. 3 weeks into the job, Sully found me, not in person, by phone. He called the diner directly and told the manager he was a concerned family member and that I was an unstable young man going through a mental health crisis who should not be trusted around kitchen equipment. The manager, a guy who had zero patience for drama, did not fire me, but he cut my hours by half while he figured out the situation. That cost me about $380 in a 2-week stretch, which does not sound like much unless your entire financial plan is built on diner wages and desperation math. I spent 3 days eating nothing but the free bread the line cook tossed me during shifts. The manager eventually restored my hours after I explained the situation, and he decided Sully was full of it, but for those 2 weeks, I was operating on a margin so thin a parking ticket would have broken me. Then about 6 weeks in, Mom showed up at the diner, Friday lunch rush. She was dressed nice, nicer than a random diner visit, warranted with a folder tucked under her arm. She spotted me before I could duck into the kitchen and walked over. She hugged me right there between the tables, in front of regulars, in front of the line cook watching through the kitchen window. I stood there with a bus tub in my hands and let it happen, because making a scene at my workplace was not an option. Then she launched into her pitch. She said she had been so worried. She wanted to help with some paperwork, health insurance, updating my information. Just some forms that needed my signature. She pulled the folder out and started opening it right there on a diner table between someone's half-eaten moussaka and a glass of iced tea. I told her this was not the time or place that I was working, and that I would call her later. She pushed just a quick signature. It would only take a second. I walked away. She left the folder on the table. I looked at the folder after she left. Inside was a stack of forms. Most of them looked like standard medical paperwork at first glance, but buried in the middle was a general financial authorization form that would have given her access to manage banking and financial accounts on my behalf. At the time, I barely had a savings account with a few $100s in it, so it seemed almost pointless. But that is how these things work. You get the signature first and figure out what to use it on later. She had sandwiched it between legitimate-looking insurance documents like a card trick. I kept the folder, did not sign anything, started keeping records of everything. Around the same time, Denise told me carefully, like she was delivering bad news to a patient, that Mom had called her, told her I had chosen to leave, that I had been hostile and aggressive towards Sully, that I was going through something and might be unstable. Denise did not buy it for a second. But the fact that Mom was out there flipping the whole story, I got kicked out and she was telling people I chose to leave, I was quiet the entire time, and somehow that made me unstable, told me exactly what kind of game she was playing. I also found out she had told Cody I did not want to talk to him right now and that I was angry at the family. She had cut the line between us and told each side the other one did not care. Textbook triangulation. And on a 14-year-old it worked perfectly. I saved every dollar I could. Denise refused rent money every time I tried. Opened a savings account at the credit union and watched the balance grow in amounts so small they were almost insulting. Eventually scraped together enough to buy a beat-up sedan off a guy Denise's husband knew. No AC check engine light permanently on, but it ran and it was mine. 3 months of bus fumes, diner grease, 4-hour sleep cycles, and a loneliness you can feel in your teeth. I was running on discipline and spite in roughly equal proportions. Then one morning at the diner, wiping down the counter before the breakfast rush, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer. The voice was calm, precise, and completely unexpected. Said he was my father's attorney, said, "My dad wanted to meet with me about something financial." My hand tightened on the phone so hard the case creaked. "Your father has requested a meeting," he said, "at your earliest convenience." I almost hung up. The man had been gone for over 5 months. Vanished, left me to catch every piece of falling debris while he ghosted his own family. Whatever he had to say was long past relevant. But I went because the part of me that needed answers was louder than the part that wanted to slam the door. The attorney's office was on the 4th floor of a downtown building. The receptionist walked me to a conference room. Dad was already there. He looked like someone had run him through a time-lapse filter set to decay, 20 pounds lighter, maybe more gray skin. His hands trembled on the table and his eyes were wet before either of us opened our mouths. I sat across from him, arms crossed, jaw set, and made it clear with every inch of body language that this meeting was going to cost him. He started talking, messy, unscripted, stumbling over his own words. He said he was sorry enough times that the word lost its shape, but he also said specific things. Missing my shifts at the warehouse, not being there when I passed my driving test. He knew my shift schedule at the diner. He knew I had been busting tables 5 nights a week. That messed me up more than the apology did. The idea that he'd been tracking my life while doing exactly nothing to help. Then he told me the truth. 7 months before he left, he'd been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Stage 4. The doctors had caught it late. He had been ignoring the fatigue, the weight loss, the persistent pain he had written off as stress. By the time the scans came back, it was bad. The doctors were talking months, not years. He said he made the decision to leave because he could not stomach the idea of his kids watching him disintegrate, that disappearing clean was merciful, that leaving us as an intact family was better than staying and making everyone watch. The logic was insane. You do not protect people by vanishing. You do not prevent pain by creating a different, worse kind of pain. But sitting across from him, seeing the conviction in his wrecked face, I could tell he believed it completely. He had gotten the worst news of his life, and his first instinct was to shield us from it. Delusional, absolutely, but it came from something real, which is more than anyone else in my family was offering. Then he told me the part that made everything click. Before he left, he discovered that Mom and Sully had been together. Not after he disappeared. Not in some ambiguous gray zone for months, possibly longer. Mom had been seeing Sully while Dad was sitting in oncology, waiting rooms, getting told how long he had left. And when Dad confronted her, she pivoted. She told him his illness would complicate the family situation, that it would be easier for the kids if he stepped aside quietly. She convinced a dying man, a man at his absolute lowest, that his own family was better off without him. He bought it. He packed a bag. He left and Mom had Sully moved in before Dad's scent faded from the pillowcases. The attorney waited for us to pull it together, then moved on to business. Despite everything, Dad had been working remotely through treatment, consulting, work in logistics, and supply chain management, his actual field. Smart investments he had been making for 20-plus years had been growing the whole time. He had been building a financial structure from his hospital bed, and he wanted it to go to me. A trust fund managed by the attorney's firm substantial enough to cover a monthly living stipend, full college tuition at a state university, and a reserve that would unlock at 25, structured carefully, no lump sum access, no CO signers, no one but me and the trustee with authority over a single dollar. I signed the paperwork, shook the attorney's hand, looked at my father one last time before I walked out. He was crying quietly, not for himself. I hugged him, and it felt like he needed it. I sat in my car in the parking garage for nearly an hour without starting the engine. I moved out of Denise's house within 2 weeks. Before I left, I sat her and her husband down and told them exactly what their help had meant. Not a generic thank you, I was specific. The midnight phone call, the protein bars, the fact that she never once made me feel like a burden, even when I obviously was. She cried. Her husband shook my hand and said, "You have got a good head, kid. Use it. I intended to." Found a studio apartment, 380 square feet, kitchenette that was more of a concept than a room. Window overlooking a tire shop parking lot. But my name was on the lease, my key in the lock. That first night I lay on a mattress on the floor and felt something I had not felt in months. Not peace exactly, just quiet. Like my brain finally stopped running threat assessments. Enrolled at community college, kept my shifts at the diner because sitting around spending trust money without earning anything myself felt wrong. Visited Dad at the care facility 3 times a week. Some days we talked, school, the apartment, a documentary series about failed bridge engineering he was binging on loop. Other days we just sat there. We were trying to rebuild something. Some days it worked. One afternoon he pulled up his investment portfolio on a tablet. Index funds, a handful of individual positions, 2 tech stocks that had performed aggressively well. He walked me through his reasoning, entry points, risk tolerance, why he had sold certain positions and held others. A masterclass in financial strategy from a man running a brokerage account from a hospital bed. Money is a tool, he said, not an identity. Do not confuse the two. About 10 days into the new apartment, the first move came. Someone attempted to open a credit card in my name using my social security number. The application was flagged and denied because the address listed did not match mine. It matched Mom and Sully's house. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus within the hour and filed a report with the FTC. 2 weeks later, the second move. Cody texted me a photo of a document, said it was a school registration form that Mom needed me to sign. It was not a school form. It was a general power of attorney template partially filled in with Mom's name as the designated agent. Someone had done a better job this time. Cleaner formatting. Letterhead close to the real school districts. But hereby grant full authority to manage financial, legal, and medical decisions is not how a school enrollment form reads. They were learning from their mistakes. That scared me more than the first attempt. I screenshotted everything, forwarded it to my attorney, did not respond to Cody. Then came the coach text from Cody himself, casual at first. "Miss you, bro. How was the new place?" But within days the questions got surgical. Where was my apartment? How was I paying for it? Was I going to college now? The questions did not sound like a 14-year-old's curiosity. They sounded rehearsed. After that it turned into a cycle. Paperwork tricks, soft threats, fake concern, and Cody used like a messenger pigeon. Then the bank account got temporarily frozen. Someone tried to initiate an electronic transfer using credentials that were close to correct, but not quite right. The bank's fraud department caught it and locked everything. Standard procedure. Except standard procedure meant I spent an entire day with zero access to my money. Could not buy groceries, could not put gas in the car, could not do anything except sit in a credit union branch filling out paperwork while a fraud specialist walked me through recovery. I spent that day broke and furious. Heartbreak is a luxury when you are calculating gas money and rent in the same breath. Then it got personal. I was at my apartment studying for a midterm when someone knocked on the door. The authoritative 3-hit kind that makes your stomach drop before you even stand up. 2 police officers, they had received a call from a concerned family member reporting that I was potentially a danger to myself and living in unstable conditions. They asked to come inside, asked if I had weapons, asked if I was having thoughts of hurting myself. I cooperated. Let them in, showed them the apartment, clean, organized, textbooks on the desk. One of the officers looked around and you could see him doing the math. This does not match the call. They took my statement, gave me a case reference number and left, but my landlord had seen the squad car. He called that evening and said he did not want any trouble. The implication was clear. One more visit and he would find a reason to end the lease. I spent an hour on the phone assuring him it was a false report. Basically auditioning to keep the apartment I was already paying for on time every month. I told my attorney everything. He added it to the file. I changed banks, set up new security, and established a dedicated email address that only the attorney's office and the trust administrator had access to. Dad's reaction when I told him was a single tired sentence. "Now you see what she is." A week later, she proved him right again. Mom showed up at my community college's registrar office, told the front desk she was my mother, and needed to verify my enrollment status and financial aid information. The registrar, bless Fura, told her they could not release any student information without my written consent. Mom did not take it well, started crying, told the staff I was in a bad situation and she was just trying to help her son. When that did not work, the tears dried up fast and she switched to demanding a supervisor. Campus security eventually walked her out. I found out because the registrar flagged it and emailed me a courtesy notice. The next day, Cody texted me something that made my vision narrow. "Mom told me you have been doing drugs and that is why you moved out. She said you need help on drugs. That was the new narrative. Not chose to leave, not unstable on drugs. Whatever version of me she needed me to be to justify what they were doing, she would build it from scratch and sell it to a kid who did not know any better. I did not respond. I screenshotted it, added it to the file. The call from Sully came on a Thursday evening. He wanted to meet. Said it was about Cody, about family stuff that needed to be discussed in person. I told him I was not interested. He said Cody had been struggling, acting out at school, pulling away from friends. That was the lever, and he knew exactly where to place it. I agreed to meet at a coffee shop the next day. Expected Sully alone. Walked in and saw Mom, Sully, and Cody in a corner booth. Ambush, of course. Sully spoke first. Full performance. He said he had been insecure, that he had projected his own baggage onto me, that he had manipulated Mom into seeing me as a threat, that he had done some real work on himself. Translation, he had practiced lying with a straighter face. Same function, better delivery. Then came the ask. Sully said he wanted to adopt me legally to formalize the family and correct the mistake of pushing me out. Then he said something that stripped away every pretense in the room. This is really about protecting the family's assets and making sure everyone is taken care of under one roof, the family's assets. My trust fund set up by my dying father, managed by my attorney, funded by my father's work. And Sully just called it the family's assets, like it was a shared bank account he had a right to audit. He did not see me as a person. I was a password that could talk. He did not want to be my dad. He wanted to be my access code, which is not something new since they kicked me out. He reached across the table. I pulled my hand back before he got close. Mom was nodding like she was watching a marriage proposal. Cody looked up at me with those younger brother eyes, all desperate hope and zero context. I let the silence sit. I need to think about it, I said, calm, neutral, giving nothing. Then I left, but not before I did something deliberate. On my way out, I stopped and said casually, almost as an afterthought, "Oh, my attorney's office set up a new email portal for trust-related correspondence. If anyone in the family needs to reach out about paperwork or whatever, they can use that channel." I gave Mom a made-up email address, one that my attorney and I had set up for exactly this, a dead inbox that existed for one reason, to see if someone from that household would try to use it to get to the trust. I said it like it did not matter, like I was not baiting a hook. Honestly, I wanted them to fall for it. It took Sully 11 days. My attorney's office logged an email from a Gmail account registered under a slight misspelling of my name, close enough to be confusing, different enough to be deniable, sent to the decoy address. The email, written in stiff legalish language that sounded like someone had Googled how to talk to a trust administrator, claimed to be from a family representative and asked for a meeting about beneficiary coordination and guardianship alignment. It name-dropped Cody's age and my recent transition to independent living as excuses to request a family review of the trust. The attorney's paralegal traced the Gmail account's recovery email to an address associated with Sully's LinkedIn profile. Not a burner, not a throwaway. Sully's actual digital footprint, 2 clicks deep, sitting right there. A few days later, Cody showed up at my apartment unannounced. I still do not know how he got the address. When I opened the door, there he was, backpack on, looking like he had rehearsed a speech on the bus ride over. He said he missed me. He said Mom was sad all the time. He said Sully had been really trying. Then he said something that stopped me cold. Sully says if you come back and do the adoption thing, he can help you manage your money, so you do not have to worry about it. A 15-year-old parroting, a grown man's financial pitch, word for word, not understanding what he was being used for. That is when whatever tiny part of me was still giving them the benefit of the doubt just died. They were using my brother as a courier, feeding him scripts, deploying a kid to do the dirty work of a con. Neither of them had the guts to run face to face. I did not take it out on Cody. I made him a sandwich, let him play a game on my laptop for an hour, and drove him home without saying a word about Sully or the trust. When I dropped him off, Mom was standing on the porch trying to look casual like she had not orchestrated the whole visit. I did not get out of the car, did not wave, just waited until Cody was inside, then drove away. I stopped arguing and started documenting. Arguing is for people who still believe shame works. 4 months passed. I went quiet, they did not. I logged everything. Every text, every voicemail, every just checking in message that was really just reconnaissance. Meanwhile, I pulled a 3.6 GPA at community college. Kept visiting Dad, whose condition had stabilized, and let them think my silence meant I was coming around. My attorney's file was finished. The credit fraud attempt with the FTC report and case number. The forged power of attorney disguised as a school form with metadata pointing to their address. The bank transfer attempt flagged by fraud. The false police report and wellness check. The decoy email traced directly to Sully's digital profile. The registrar incident. 6 documented incidents of fraud, identity theft, impersonation, and attempted financial manipulation, all aimed at me and my trust. Every single one a criminal offense on its own. Together, a pattern so clean it practically filed itself. My attorney had also contacted Sully's employer. Not to make accusations, but to file a formal compliance inquiry. In his industry, compliance does not play. People at his level are held to integrity standards. A documented pattern of fraud, even without filed charges, was enough to trigger an internal review once formally submitted. He did not file criminal charges. He filed a compliance packet. And compliance investigations do not require proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They require enough documented concern. We had more than enough. I also filed a formal police report. Case number assigned, detective contacted, statement given. The detective told me cases like this moved slow and rarely led to prosecution, unless the dollar amounts were significant. That was fine. I did not need a conviction. I needed a case number. Case numbers attached to names. They follow people into background checks. They do not expire. When the file was done and every piece was exactly where my attorney and I wanted it, I arranged the meeting. Their house, their turf. I wanted them relaxed, confident, thinking I had come around. I showed up with my attorney, both in business casual, him carrying a briefcase that could end their play in one sitting. I knocked on the door of the house I used to call home. Mom opened it. I watched her face go from surprised to confused to scared when she saw my attorney, and then she landed on this forced, hopeful smile. She let us in. Sully was already standing in the living room, power position, feet planted, projecting authority. Cody was on the couch looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Sully started immediately. "Hey, glad you came, knew you would come around." He gestured to the chairs. "Sit down, let us talk next steps." I did not sit. "There are not next steps," I said. "There are consequences." The smile on Sully's face did not drop. It froze like a screensaver that had not caught up to the input. My attorney opened his briefcase and laid it out methodically. The way you present findings in a boardroom, which I figured Sully would appreciate given his professional background. 6 documented incidents. The credit card application using my social security number traced to their address. The forged power of attorney created on their home network. The bank transfer attempt. The false wellness check that brought police to my apartment. The decoy email traced to Sully's own LinkedIn recovery address. And the college registrar visit where campus security escorted Mom out after she tried to access my records. Every single one either a criminal offense or documented harassment. Together, a case file that would make any prosecutor's afternoon. My attorney also mentioned, almost as an aside, that a formal compliance inquiry had been filed with Sully's employer 3 weeks prior. Sully's face changed for the first time, not panic, recognition. He knew what a compliance investigation meant in his industry: internal audits, suspended authority, administrative leave while the review played out. His name was now in a file in his company's legal department, and in an industry where regulatory trust is the product, that file does not close. "You cannot do that," Sully said. First time I'd ever heard his voice without its polished coating, raw, stripped. "Already done," my attorney said, filed and acknowledged as if on cue. And I swear this was not staged, but the timing was surgical. Sully's phone buzzed on the side table. He glanced at it reflexively. I watched his eyes scan the screen. I watched the color leave his face in real time. He did not say what it was. He did not have to. The compliance department works on its own schedule, and apparently that schedule had just delivered. Mom started crying. She kept saying she did not know. She did not know about the credit application. She did not know about the emails. She did not know Sully was trying to access the trust. "You did not know Dad was dying either," I said. "You did not know Sully was manipulating you into kicking out your own son. You did not know someone was forging legal documents and sending them through your kid's phone. That is a lot of not knowing for someone who always seems to know exactly what she wants." She did not have an answer for that. And for the first time, she did not try the tears again. She just went still like the script had ended, and she did not have the next page. I said what I came to say. "Here is what is happening. You are not adopting me. You are not accessing the trust. You are not getting a dime. Not now. Not ever. The compliance inquiry is active. The police report is open with an assigned case number. The FTC fraud report is documented. A cease and desist will arrive by certified mail within the week. If anyone, you, Mom, Cody, anyone acting on your behalf, contacts my attorney's office, attempts to access my accounts, or approaches me regarding the trust in any capacity, we file criminal charges, identity theft, fraud, forgery. The file is complete. The only reason charges have not been filed is because I am choosing not to file them today. That choice has an expiration date, and I am not telling you when it is." I turned to Cody. He was curled into the corner of the couch, knees pulled up, making himself small. 16 years old and caught in the middle of something he never asked to be part of. "Hey," I said quieter, "none of this is your fault, you know that, right?" He looked up at me, and for the first time he did not look like a kid repeating someone else's script. He looked like a kid who was finally hearing something that was actually meant for him. "They told me you left because you did not want to be around us," he said, small voice breaking. "I did not leave," I said. "I was told to go. There is a difference. And when you are old enough to see all of it clearly, call me. I will pick up." Sully reached for Cody's shoulder, instinctive, possessive, and Cody flinched away from his hand. Small movement, but I saw it. And Sully saw that I saw it. My attorney and I left. The cease and desist arrived 4 days later, signed for by Sully himself. 2 weeks after the confrontation, he was placed on leave. The compliance investigation, once opened, found other stuff. Padded mileage, double-billed client events, minor things nobody would have looked at twice without a microscope already on him. But that is the thing about compliance investigations. They do not stay in their lane. They spread. By the end of the month, Sully was out. Mutually agreed separation. Corporate speak, for they let him resign before they made it public. No severance, no reference letter. In an industry where your name is your resume, he was now the guy who got quietly pushed out under a regulatory cloud. Good luck explaining that gap in your next interview. One more thing. After the cease and desist, Sully called the trust administrator's office directly, one last try. The receptionist recognized his voice and said 5 words, "This call is being recorded." He hung up. That was the last contact anyone in that household made with my legal team. Some doors do not close with a slam, they close with a click. I drove past the house exactly once to drop off a birthday card for Cody. The Audi was gone, replaced by a 10-year-old sedan parked crooked in the driveway, like it was bought in a hurry from whoever was closest. The house Dad paid for that Sully claimed as his looked a lot different without the Audi money lifestyle propping it up. Mom called once after the cease and desist. I let it go to voicemail. 40 seconds of mostly silence punctuated by, "I am sorry, I saved it. Not because it moved me. Documentation is a habit now. I am writing this from my apartment. It is late. Radiators clanking. Community college wraps next semester and I am transferring to state in the fall. Business administration with a minor in finance. Turns out watching your dying father outperform the market from a hospital bed teaches you more than any classroom will. GPA is a 3.6. Not bad for a guy who was scraping gyro grease off diner floors 2 years ago. Dad is still here. Still stubborn. As for Mom and Sully, I do not think about them. The paperwork is filed. The drawers are locked. Whatever happens to them is not my problem. They made their choices. I made mine. The difference is, mine came with receipts. And Cody, the offer stands. When he is ready, I will pick up. But I am done chasing anyone. Not for love, not for family, not for anything. That version of me is gone. They kicked me out when I had nothing. Came crawling back when I had something. Funny how that works. Stepping back from the personal emotions of the protagonist, this sequence of events leaves us with a profound look at the law of cause and effect. Every choice of endurance in the past comes with a heavy price in the future. What unfolded here was not simply a bitter family conflict, but a familiar pattern that appears in many households where loyalty, silence, and obligation are manipulated until they become tools of control rather than expressions of love. In this story, a young man was asked to sacrifice his stability, his truth, and eventually his future, all under the banner of what's best for the family. Yet the moment money entered the picture, the illusion collapsed. The same people who pushed him out suddenly discovered the language of reconciliation, proving a painful truth. Sometimes the concept of family harmony is used not to preserve love, but to protect power. When we look closely, the toxic cycle becomes clear. One person exploits guilt, another spreads false narratives, and the most vulnerable, often children like Cody, are placed in the middle as messengers or shields. Society often praises endurance in family relationships. We are told that a good son forgives endlessly, that keeping peace is more important than confronting wrongdoing, and that exposing the truth somehow breaks the family apart. But the reality is the opposite. The family was already broken the moment manipulation replaced honesty and loyalty became a one-sided demand. In many cultures, the pressure to remain silent is powerful, especially when elders or parents insist that obedience equals respect. Yet silence rarely heals injustice. It only allows it to grow roots. That is why the most important moment in this story is not the legal confrontation, the trust fund, or even the downfall of the manipulative stepfather. The true turning point is the moment the narrator stops arguing and starts setting boundaries. Boundaries are often misunderstood as cruelty. In truth, they are a form of clarity. When someone refuses to participate in deception, refuses to sign documents designed to exploit them, and refuses to carry guilt that was never theirs, they are not destroying the family. They are refusing to continue a lie. That kind of decision requires an enormous amount of courage, especially for someone so young. I think many of us can recognize pieces of this situation in our own lives. Maybe not with trust funds or lawyers, but with emotional manipulation, selective storytelling, or relatives who rewrite history to protect themselves. And when you hear stories like this, it invites you to ask yourself an uncomfortable but necessary question. When does patience stop being compassion and start becoming permission for others to harm you? The narrator chose self-respect over acceptance, documentation over denial, and distance over endless reconciliation attempts. Those choices did not erase the pain, but they restored something far more valuable: control over his own future. So here is the question that lingers long after the story ends. If the people who once cast you out suddenly returned only after discovering you had something valuable, money, stability, or success, would you open the door again for the sake of family, or would you close it permanently to protect the life you fought to rebuild?